Based on the acclaimed best-selling book by Victor LaValle, The Changeling is a fairy tale for grown-ups. This new series is show-ran by Kelly Marcel, as this is a horror story about parenthood as well as a fable and a dangerous odyssey through the streets of New York City that you didn't know existed. This 8-part drama, starring and executive produced by Academy Award nominee LaKeith Stanfield, will be making its debut with the first 3 episodes premiering on Friday, September 8th on Apple TV+, followed by one new episode every Friday through October 13th. Now, I've had the opportunity to check out the first 3 episodes, and in today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you all my thoughts on the story, the performances, and answering the big question at hand: is this a must-see show? We'll be discussing that and much more in today's breakdown review. But first, let's have a conversation in the comments below. Let me know if you all have heard of this show, number one. More importantly, once you've seen the first 3 episodes, what did you think? Let me know your thoughts on the pacing, the story. Were you intrigued by the characters? Did you care for the characters? What worked, what didn't work? And more importantly, will you be sticking around to see how this story wraps up at the end? Now, ever since Apple TV Plus premiered back in 2019, I have been watching and reviewing and recommending so many different shows from the platform, whether it be shows such as The Morning Show, See, Servant, Defending Jacob, Ted Lasso, and Severance, just to name a few. I have been saying this for a while now. Now, while I enjoy other streaming services such as Netflix or Amazon or Disney Plus, I feel as though nowadays they are prioritizing quantity over quality. They seem to just continue to pump out shows and movies, and some of those shows and movies are great, some of them not so great. But when it comes to Apple TV Plus, for me, their main priority is quality. I was already interested in this show just based on the fact that I love Apple TV Plus, but then when you add in the fact that it stars LaKeith Stanfield, who's making his major producing credit, which is huge for his career, because I've been a fan of his since seeing him in a film called Short Term 12, which came out over a decade ago, and ever since then, he has just continued to impress me as an actor. Now, he also happens to star on one of my favorite shows of all time by Atlanta, as he played a character by the name of Darius, so this show was a must-see show for me, period. With that being said, is it worth checking out? So the way I'll be handling today's video is I'm going to be as spoiler free as possible. Now, I might get a little bit more in depth on some of the performances and some of the more story developmental points of this show, but again, I'm going to keep it as spoiler free as possible. So let's start things off by talking about the story and talking about episode 1. Now, in this first episode, we're introduced to our main characters who go by the name of Apollo and Emma. Now, Apollo is a very smart individual. He's an only child. He's very much into reading new novels and making sure that he's keeping his intellect as high as possible. So he happens to get into a relationship with our character by the name of Emma, who happens to be a librarian. Now, Apollo, when you see the first episode, he continues to ask Emma on a date. I believe it was over 6 times before she said yes, and ultimately they hit it off. But this new romance is unfortunately somewhat cut short because Emma, as you all will learn, has a plan to go on a trip out of the country, and she's had this plan ever since she was a little girl. Now, what I'm about to say next is public knowledge. Is actually in the trailer for this show. Emma goes on a trip, and when she goes on this trip, she comes across this very mysterious woman who ties a string on her wrist and gives her 3 wishes before the knots are tied and tells Emma to not cut this string. Now, Emma decides to come back home from this trip, and she tells Apollo about this strange encounter. Now, Apollo is a very confident individual, and he decides to cut this string and tells Emma that all of her wishes will come true if she decides to fall in love with him. And this is where their love story, or I should say tragic love story, begins. The thing that really gripped me in this first episode was the mysterious nature of these characters. Now, I'm not going to go too far in depth, but as you'll learn this first episode, Apollo has a mother and a father, and let's just say something happens to his relationship with his parents that really shapes Apollo's feelings on parenting, but more importantly on him being a father to he wants to have kids with Emma one day. Which, speaking of Emma, we also learn about her childhood in episode 1, and she has a very traumatic experience as a child, which kind of shapes her idea of family. But again, the important thing of episode 1 that it really shines a light on is that both of their childhoods were very different, but they were both surrounded by trauma and mystery. To me, episode 1 did a really good job of setting the tone and the mood and really making you interested and really invested in caring for these characters who I found to be not only likable but very relatable, but also it gives the audience just enough information to make you question if this love story will have a happy ending. Found the direction to be very detailed and meticulous. I really enjoyed the cinematography and the score, and the mystery surrounding these characters' childhood was handled really well. Hook at the end of the episode was really solid. It puts these characters on a path of having and creating their own family, but the big thing they have to face is at what cost. So overall, I would give this first episode a solid 8 out of 10. Great mystery, great performances, and it really sets the mood. Now this is where my critiques kind of come in more with the show, and that is episode 2. Now in this second episode, our characters are now parents, and what I did appreciate about this second episode, even though I'm going to be having some critiques here in a second, it really did show the horrors of parenthood, but more particularly the desires for our characters to not become their parents. We have various examples of these characters really going through these emotional journeys, but in particularly Emma, who's dealing with postpartum. But the thing about this episode was the execution just wasn't great to me. We spend more time with Emma as a mom in this episode, and while I did enjoy her performance, the episode focuses on tropes that we've seen before in horror genres a million times. We have this new mother. She believes that her child doesn't like her. She's starting to see different things. She believes that people are following her and her child around. She's getting these mysterious messages on her phone. And of course, one of the things I hate about this trope is the husband, who's loving, who's understanding, who is LaKeith Stanfield's character Apollo, a really great dude. He all of a sudden just discredits her, and he tells her the thing that is just so annoying in these type of stories. She should seek medical help. Now again, tropes are found in every single genre, and while I don't expect them to reinvent the subject matter, at least make sure that it rolls properly, that it's paced properly. And that's where the issue of this episode falls to me, because we're giving this more information on Emma, on her past, as we see her dealing with the fears of being a mother, added into this idea that she comes across this group that goes by the Wise Women, and it just was just uninteresting. It lacked the uniqueness and the depth that we got from the first episode from me. And while talking about performances, I love LaKeith Stanfield, but he plays in the second episode more of a basic everyday guy, and seeing him play that role and also him ignoring his wife's concerns and doing the woman's crazy, it really kind of bothered me while watching this episode, because again, LaKeith Stanfield is so talented, and just seeing him play a basic stereotypical husband in this scenario just kind of took away the depths of him as an actor, as well as the other actress that we have in the show who's also really good. And then you add on top of the fact that the characters never considered that these crazy occurrences that are happening with Emma could be the fact that what they did in episode 1 could have caused all this craziness. So it was just plot points that didn't make sense to me, and I really wasn't enjoying the tropes that we had in this episode. So for me, episode 2 was the weakest out of the 3, and I'm going to give that a 6 out of 10. But luckily, moving on to episode 3, which to me got back on track and was more in line with episode 1, the show focusing more on the characters, also leaning more into their personal fears of being a parent, but also the worst thing that you can ever imagine of being a parent, but also the worst thing you can imagine happening with someone you love. Now, episode 3 opens with an extremely emotional scene that is also very disturbing, and it's the emotional weight throughout this third episode that really worked for me, as well as LaKeith Stanfield completely shows you why he's a great actor, as he's dealing with the aftermath of a very traumatic experience that happens at the beginning of this third episode. For episode 1 establishes the relationship between Emma and Apollo, episode 2 focused more on Emma and her relationship with her son, episode 3 really shows you Apollo and what he's going through on this emotional journey and leads him to discovering some really important things. One, we have the mystery surrounding his dad, which was completely something very important to him and changes his perspective on his loving mother, who's very pivotal to him in this show and has a really good relationship with him, and makes these connections such as a book that was left from him from someone that was very important to him, as well as this third episode ties it all together to Emma and her connections to this particular supernatural group of people that was very, very intriguing, especially the way they end that third episode that made me feel like, okay, I want to know what's going to happen next. So for me, episode 3 got a 7.5 out of 10. Positively speaking, the first 3 episodes at its best was a show focused on these characters characters' past trauma, which shaped them, and the mysterious nature surrounding these characters. Whether we look at Emma and her relationship with her mother and how she wants to be different from her mom, and then Apollo and his dad and how he wants to be a better father than his father ever was to him. Now, I'm not gonna lie, horror elements of the show, I wasn't watching this afraid or thinking it was very scary, but it really plays more into the fantasy folklore story, and a story that plays into the fears of parenthood, as well as seeing the journey of these lovers trying to bring back peace and love into their family was a really good strong point for me in these first 3 episodes. And I'm not gonna lie, selfishly, as a black man, I love seeing black people in all types of genres, but in particularly horror, which is my favorite genre. I love seeing black people in this because for me personally, we don't see that too often, right? The last time I can remember like a predominantly black cast in a horror supernatural fantasy show was Lovecraft Country, which don't even get me started on how I'll never forgive HBO for canceling that show, but I love seeing us black people in these type of genres. But with that being said, even though it is a black-led show, I don't feel as though this being primarily focused on black characters, it doesn't make it exclusive, like a black exclusive experience. I feel like this is a show that anyone can watch, but also a story that anyone and everyone can relate to. Now, I've already kind of spoken on the negatives, which was mainly in the second episode, relying too heavily on tropes that I personally just don't like in the horror genre. And also, there were some pacing issues with the second episode. And overall, the story in that second episode to me was the weakest element. But when it comes to these 3 episodes, I did feel like when it got to the first episode, it was really intriguing, hooked me by the end. Didn't like episode 2, but episode 3 really made me intrigued to see what's going to happen next. So overall, again, if you take all my scores, again, an 8, a 6, and a 7.5, I'm going to overall say that the first 3 episodes is a 7 out of 10. And based on these 3 episodes, I wouldn't say I'm over the moon about the series so far, but I'm interested enough and I'm invested enough in these characters to see what's going to happen and see more of the fantastical supernatural elements play out as it was hinted at in this series. And I want to see if it's going to stick the landing. So there you have it. Those are my thoughts on the first 3 episodes of The Changeling. I do think it's a show worth investing in. And if you all are into this show, I will be watching the rest of the show. But I want to know in the comments right now, do you want me to do weekly breakdowns for the rest of the season? I'm talking about breaking down the character moments, the story, making theory videos. Is there enough meat on the bone that you all would like me to invest time in making those videos for you all? Let me know by commenting, yes, I want to see more of these videos, but also hit the like button, share the video, and I will know as a content creator and as someone that loves talking about fantasy and sci-fi horror that you guys want me to break down the show, because I will do it, but I need to know if you will be on with me on this journey. So let me know again by liking, sharing, commenting your thoughts in the comment section. If you stuck around to this point of the video, I really want to take the time to thank you for investing time into my content. You all are great. Hope you're staying safe. As you see on the screen now, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that notification bell. Check out all my reviews that I've done so far for Apple TV Plus shows. Check out my most recent review, and I'll catch you all on the next breakdown.